Well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, Jesus, here we go, Senior Editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. It's been a long day at work, Eric. I'm sorry. So here we are. We are live. We don't normally do lives on Mondays without something big, and we actually have something big. We have a guest who will be joining us here shortly, and BobbySkinner of Giants Nation, formerly of Talking Giants. And but Eric, we're getting closer and closer. Things are starting to happen. First off, what do you got in your glass, bud? Because I'm going with a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, handcrafted ale. I got this here.
Yeah, I've got a Werner's Gruner Pils from Germany. It says it started brewing in 1436. So,
wow, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, sort of fancy. The wife picked it up. So she knows we're doing this now. So she knows I have to have some kind of different beer each time. So she's just going down the aisle picking it. So it's a good way for me to get beer in the budget more.
So they started brewing the last time the Giants were in the playoffs. So anyway,
exactly.
So here we go. So what did you think? Let's just kind of quickly, because I know our guest will arrive,
right?
Barring any unforeseen circumstances. What do you think over the last couple of days? The Colorado Pro Day became very interesting. The Giants sent a very large contingent to Colorado. What were your thoughts?
It was crazy because if you saw the people that were on the ground, they said it was nuts how many press people were there too. So it wasn't just the 32 teams. All 32 teams were represented, but also just the media coverage there. So the people that were actually there said they've never seen anything like it for the showcase, is what they called it.
Right,
so,
right.
I've heard really mixed things. You see the Twitter clips of him throwing the long bombs, and then you hear other pundits come on and say, "Well,
we'll go straight. You know what?
We'll go straight. Yeah.
Let's just bring a guest on. We're going three wide here." So join us right now, formerly of Talking Giants, but more importantly of Giants Nation, Mr. Bobby Bobby, thanks for joining us. John McDevitt, Eric Kennedy. Welcome aboard Inside BBI.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I've kind of been new. I'm still fairly new to like the Giants online forum and stuff, right? I've always been a Giants fan, but never really. And it was Big Blue Interactive was a huge part of, growing Talking Giants, because the O-line reports would get posted on there. I used to check. I'd put out like a video I was proud of, and then I'd like refresh BBI. Like, all right, someone needs to post it. Someone needs to post it. So I appreciate you guys.
Oh, yeah. We always got somebody's always posting in the forum the link to your show. So here's Bobby's new breakdown on Shane Lemieux or whoever you were covering at the time. So it's pretty awesome. So, and it's also neat is when I'm going through YouTube, the YouTube's hooked up to our main TV in our family room. Your stuff is always coming up on, and I have to explain to my wife, well, let me just see this breakdown. And she's like, oh, so it's pretty cool.
I'm brand new. I'm also brand new to the using YouTube on my TV. I held off for as long as possible, and now it's basically like the only thing I watch on my TV now.
Yeah.
Nice. So, real quick, because I mean, a lot of changes for you, obviously, and you've talked about it. So I'm going to leave the door open to any direction you want to go with that, or if we're just going to talk Giants. But one thing I wanted to ask you, you had a video a few months ago specifically about what you thought the Giants should do in terms of the coaching staff, the GM specifically, and that got a lot of attention, and it just seemed like the Giants weren't very happy with it either. Since that time, though, the moves that the Giants have made, they kept the GM, the moves that they've made, what are your thoughts on free agency, where the Giants went, and how that is going to impact the upcoming draft?
So I feel like, like when they got kept, right, it turned into not just what they had done over 3 years, but it's like, all right, well, what are they going to do this year? Because the seat is hot, right? John Mara, if the seat would have already been hot, but John Mara made it extraordinarily hot by his end of season press conference. And then the Hail Marys line came out of Joe Shane. I actually think when you look at their free agency, it was reasonable. Right now, here's the thing: is I think they kind of backed into being more reasonable with the quarterback position because they were all in on Stafford. I mean, you guys knew that. I'm sure you guys talked to some of the same people as me. They they weren't just in on Stafford. They believed Matthew Stafford was going to be
Mm-hmm.
their quarterback. They thought it was like they were very confident it was going to happen. And then waiting on Rodgers, which I was in on Rodgers until I realized this is just a Rodgers game where, again, he still hasn't signed with the Steelers. You know, he's working out with DK Metcalf, but like still not signing. And I think a Russell Jameis combo is like the smartest decision for them, at least going into the draft. And then you look at their free agent moves. I like Paulson Adebo. I like that. Devon Holland, I think it's someone who needs to improve to play up to what was kind of viewed at coming out. But again, a solid player, not a gigantic deal. And then just like your regular type of contracts, not going crazy. The issue, though, is I agree with that, but I don't think that this roster is smart moves away from competing. So even though I am appreciative of that as a person who will be here long after Joe Shane, I do still like worry about once the games start happening, like this being a team that loses more games than it wins, especially with the I think they have the hardest schedule in the NFL this year.
Great. We're looking forward to that.
They could improve and still win like 6 games, which is like, is that enough after 4 years? It shouldn't be, you know?
Right.
How surprised were you when the Giants re-signed Darius Slayton, though?
Surprised because everyone told me that it was not going to happen. But I was actually, again, another move I liked bringing back. I didn't want to create a new hole on the team, and that's what would have you like? This is my counter to anyone who didn't want to keep Slayton, and especially at that deal. Right? I think we all thought he had a bigger contract than that. You let Darius Slayton walk. He's not a perfect player. He's not your number one. You have Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot, but how do you feel that second outside wide receiver role? Because it's a pretty important position, and I especially if you're bringing in a new quarterback, like they'd like to have that second wide receiver that they trust. The options were just kind of not there, right? And free agency, they shouldn't have. They weren't going to go be the big spenders, and then the middle tier, Darius Slayton was the best of that bunch. And then I didn't want them backed into a hole where they felt like they need to draft one with that second round or early third round pick. So I like bringing that back. I think Slayton he's just someone who will bounce between overrated and underrated within the fan base. You know, when he's dropping passes, he's going to be underrated. When he has a year like 2023 where he didn't drop any passes, then he gets a little overrated.
Right.
But just a solid player that I think is valuable for any quarterback compared to just trying to fill it with whatever else they could.
Well, it'll be nice to see what these guys they have at wide receiver and tight end can do with a quarterback. So again, I don't want to turn this into a Daniel Jones bashing show, but the fact that Daniel Jones has been the quarterback for the last 6 years with other backups playing as well too. John and I have talked about this before. How good are some of the players that we have? We don't really know still because the quarterback can't always get them the ball, at least can't get them the ball in stride and do damage after the catch. So for instance, a lot of people look at the Colts game, which is a little bit dangerous because the Colts didn't come to play that day, but you saw what can happen if the quarterback can get the ball to the wide receivers in stride and doing yards after the catch damage. Right. So some of us are thinking about, we'd like to see what Wan'Dale can do. We can like to see what Jalen Hyatt can do, Darius Slayton can do, and so forth with a quarterback that can get them the ball. So
I think Slayton's the one who will benefit the most, right? It's at least with the quarterbacks they have on the roster right now, because Neighbors is going to have big numbers no matter what. Right. We're talking about a difference between a 1,300-yard season or a 15. Like he's going to have wide receiver one numbers. These specific quarterback, Russ and Jameis, Wan'Dale's usage is going to go down. It's not a great fit there. So Slayton should go up, especially with the way those guys attack down the field. And Slayton is someone who can win at all 3 levels. So I think Slayton is the one who benefits the most from these quarterbacks. Now, if they draft Shador, Wan'Dale's usage, maybe it doesn't go to the same thing it was last year, but it certainly goes up. But I think Slayton is the one that benefits the most out of anyone for these specific quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's the Wan'Dale one that does concern me a little bit. I mean, it's not Winston's forte, it's not Wilson's forte. They're down the field guys. They're the moon ball or more of a gunshot. Whereas Wan'Dale needs to be hit in stride, short stuff, pick stuff up, so that he may suffer. thoughts on Jalen Hyatt? Is this really his last chance to show something? And again, a lot of it is still on how he plays. But now, at least if you can send him streaking, you've got quarterbacks that can throw him the ball.
Yeah, I'm not a big Hyatt fan. I think he can run one route, and when you have a guy like Malik Neighbors, you're not going to put him on the front side of reads, and you can't put him on the backside for any other routes than go balls. So it's just he's not that much of a useful player, except for with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson increases his value some, doesn't make him a starting level wide receiver,
Right.
but I think Russ is actually like the best quarterback, in the NFL for Jalen Hyatt because he throws so much on the outside vertically, right? It's not even over the middle stuff. Like it's just outside vertical, and that gives Hyatt value. Now, unfortunately, I think that value is topped out as a 500-yard receiver, and that's being, a little generous with the roster that they have. So I think Hyatt was just I don't think he's a good wide receiver, but he does have that speed that allows him to have a big game here or there. And I think Russ is the quarterback who helps utilize that the best.
Right. So you're the offensive line guy. That's your area of expertise. I think you played offensive line in college. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm struggling with is Evan Neal. He comes out of the draft at SEC, 4-year starter, played right tackle, guard, and left tackle. Every consensus top 10 pick. Some people even had him in the top 5. Some even had him as the first overall pick. To me, it is one of the biggest, and I've followed the draft for 30 years. It's one of the biggest head scratchers to me that Evan Neal can't even play at a just ordinary starter level right tackle. It's just I still can't wrap my head around that he's been this bad. And I know injuries have played a factor. I know you watched a lot of the offensive line, in particular, in your breakdowns. What are you seeing with Evan Neal? I mean, we see the issues in pass protection, but you didn't see that complete lack of coordination when he was in the SEC against some really good pass rushers.
Well, he looked awesome in college. The biggest knock, though, was the balance. And I think I was someone who wanted Evan Neal. And it taught me, do not overlook balance, right? Because sometimes we look at guys in the draft like, oh, like this, but this is bad. But, hey, all this other good stuff. And we say, oh, well, let's work with the good. The more and more I've done draft stuff, the more I'm like, you know what? Bad stuff matters. It can stop you from getting on the field. And I think his balance is just such an issue. And then his foot speed is, it's not amazing with that size and balance, and just great pass rushers are able to take advantage of that consistently. And then when that happens a couple of times, I think his confidence tackle is a big time confidence position. And then that gets shot, and it's just a guy who's not out for a tackle. And I know he gets graded a little higher in the run game. I think there's technique issues in the run game that show up. The bad balance shows up. You work him on a combo, or he gets hands on a guy and gets some movement. It looks really good. But I think with Neal, I learned don't overlook balance.
Right.
If anything, it's one of the most important things for a guy who's 6'7", right? Just because you got bad balance at that size. I mean, you're like a tower looking to be toppled over.
Now, if you were calling the shots, would you move him to guard?
Yeah, not because I'm sitting here saying it's going to fix them or whatever, but it's at least worth a shot.
Right.
I would move him to guard in camp. I would see how camp played out preseason, and if it didn't look good, right? And I'm not talking about like, oh, man, there's some good moments here. If it didn't look like it was actually going to be salvaged, I would look to do one of those end of camp pick swap trades if I'm not liking what I'm seeing.
Right.
It's unfortunate because he's the 7th overall, and maybe Evan Neal can get to a point where he is a backup guard or a backup tackle. But as the 7th overall pick, he's never going to be as a New York Giant. Like it's just you're not going to re-sign your 7th overall pick to be a swing tackle. He's going to go elsewhere. So I would again try at guard, see how camp and preseason goes. If you like it, try it. If you don't, look to get whatever you could back for the asset.
It's just a darn shame, because if you could plug him in at right guard and you knew he could play at a high level, that takes off a major need going into this draft. But the problem is the Giants don't even know if he can handle guard. And that's one of the tragedies about him. Again, part of this was he was hurt coming into the year, didn't play until the midway point, and wasn't getting the practice snaps. But we came out of last year not even knowing if Evan Neal can handle guard. So we got to handle free agency, which they did. Like, they can't assume he can handle guard, and we'll probably have to go into the draft thinking we might have to get a right guard.
Yeah, I wish after that preseason game against the Jets, they said, all right, tackle's done. Spend a year practicing at guard, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And obviously started games at right tackle towards the end of the year. I thought they did a good job of trying to hide him.
Yeah.
So I wish they would have tried that. But even like you said, you move him forward and address it in the draft if you see the guy. Like I just did a mock draft to Jordan 70 from Arizona, and guess what? John Runyon's deal is cuttable after the year. Greg Van Roten's on a 1-year deal.
Right.
If you think he looks good and you like what the rookie is, maybe the rookie sits for an extra year, right? That's not the worst thing in the world, is to have a depth. Or hey, John Runyon gets injured and doesn't look as good, then that's a guy you can cut, and then you have that rookie and Evan Neal starting at guard. So again, I'm at the point now with Evan Neal. It's just try things, just try something different than tackle, because again, even if he gets to a swing tackle level, that's never going to be the long-term plan for him with the Giants.
Yeah, the worst thing that happened with Evan Neal, beyond the fact that the balance issues that we all see, is then he had the lower body injuries. You've already got a problem with your balance, then you add the lower body injuries. It's just not a guy you can count on out on an island. You surprised that the Giants continually tried to force Josh Azudu out at tackle over and over and over again, when clearly he just was not the guy to be out there.
So if you listen to Talking Giants last summer, right? Draft is over, rookie camp ends, and then OTAs pop up and Josh Azudu is working at tackle. That became every interview we did. Be like, why is Josh Azudu playing tackle? They didn't draft him to play tackle. At least I'm not sitting here saying, oh, he's going to work at guard. But why aren't we even practicing him at guard? We've seen tackle isn't going to work.
Right.
Like, try him at guard, right? That's what you drafted him 67th overall. Like, we talk about JMS not being up to what it is. I think JMS is at least a starting level player. Azudu was taken 10 slots later in the previous draft. Like, that's basically, the same range of draft pick between those guys. Try him at guard, and they were just insistent. He's a tackle. He's a tackle. He's a tackle. They play in one game, and then they bench him for Chris Hubbard, who had off the 49ers practice squad a week before. I think he's not even in my mind anymore. But I spent all summer last year being like, I think this is really dumb. But it made me feel dumb, though, because I'm like, well, what am I not seeing? Like, why are they so insistent on it? And then you saw that they pulled the plug on it immediately.
Right. And you wonder if they've wrecked his confidence, too. So I wish they had just left him at guard.
Yeah, leave him at guard. He wouldn't have had to play until late in the season, right? Because Runyon and Van Roten stayed fairly healthy until Runyon. And then you could have seen him, let him spend a whole year developing and not having to worry about planning for the opponent, but just working on his craft. And then you would have got a nice little 4-game sample size at the end of the year of him working at guard. Instead, he's just a totally wasted asset. And I would be shocked if he's not released at the end of,
the weird thing is that they did it under 2 different offensive line coaches. So you could say, you can't blame one guy on this. So sometimes I wonder, is this even coming from above the offensive line? Is Brian Dable involved in that decision? Because it just seems so odd. It just seems so out of place. And so does the decision not to start moving Evan Neal over to guard. It seems like they're just being stubborn with it.
Here's what led to it is the lack of desire to take swing tackle seriously. Because we forget, because Jermaine Eleanor played right tackle and he was good at it. Another thing I spent all offseason, I was like, I do not like Eleanor just being a guard. Like, let him and Evan Neal battle for that job. Why are we just guaranteeing him starting? Like, if Evan Neal is good in the first 2 weeks of training camp, then you can move Eleanor to guard. He's the vet. He's done it before. Instead, all offseason, he didn't get a single tackle snap. And day 1 of training camp, Evan Neal's not ready. And now all of a sudden, it was like a blessing in disguise in the sense that Neal did not be ready because they just moved Eleanor to tackle and kicked him out there. I always thought that should have been a battle between the two. And then if Neal surprises you, great, move Eleanor to guard. Instead, they kind of banked on Neal being healthy and good, and neither one happened.
There's a weird and I said it a while ago. Eric and I during one of our shows and during the season. There's a weird organizational arrogance about some of the things that they do, where they just double down on it to prove a point almost. Even the idea of we don't want to move too many people around when you were really at that point you had no left tackle. Illuminor made the most sense to put the guy. You got to protect the backside of your quarterback. I'm okay if you have to kind of rotate somebody else at right tackle. I'm worried about the left side. You're like, nah, we'll just keep throwing somebody else out there. And then they finally did make the switch. But there's an organization.
And John said that at the time. You said before they put Azudu out there, you said, "What the hell are they doing? Just move Illuminor out there." And then that lasted a week.
Yeah, it's a weird thing how they doubled down on it over and over and over again. So I saw some of the things that you've been posting. So let's talk about the coming draft. So we know who we've got. We know now, where we're at and kind of what's going to happen above us. We think Tennessee is going to go Ward. That seems to be what's happening, assuming the Giants don't trade up. Cleveland's the question mark. The two guys that seem to be mainly in question, Hunter, Carter. Which one do you prefer falls to the Giants? And if he does fall, do they take him, whichever one of the two, over Sanders there?
I prefer Abdul Carter. I just think he's better at what he does versus Carter on each side. Now, if Carter can truly play both sides and play consistently, then yeah, he's a more valuable piece. But that's going to be really hard to do. And even if he does it early, how long does he do it? And it's not a knock on Carter, not a knock on Hunter.
Hunter,
yeah. It's just I think Abdul Carter is awesome. And he plays a position that I value a little more. And I just think he's a better player. So I'm not getting stressed out on that too much either. So I just think he's a better player. And I would love, right? I've seen people talk about it. If there's one fan base who should be totally in on just drafting a pass rusher, even if it's not your biggest need, it's the Giants. Like, we've done it twice, right? Mm-hmm. Tuck being added to Trahan and Osi, yep. JPP being added to Tuck and Osi. Like, it works. And it doesn't win you a Super Bowl just having a nice pass rush, but it is something that it's the ultimate great quarterback stopper, right? Like, anytime you see a great quarterback lose in the Super Bowl, it's usually because that pass rush is just getting home. So you need that franchise quarterback to get to that Super Bowl, but that pass rush is the thing that you pair with that franchise QB to start winning Super Bowls and not just be the Cincinnati Bengals or the Buffalo Bills, who are close. They're great, and they'll probably get one eventually, maybe, but it's just tough to finish the job. So there's that. And I'm at the point where I do think they do, because I don't think they love Shedeur Sanders. I think all their actions all offseason have pointed to them not being in love with Shedeur Sanders. And as much as I try to not pay attention to any pre-draft rumors, because I think it's the thing that people are most consistently wrong on, or just kind of talk out of their ass because it can't be proven wrong until the draft. But everything is pointing to them not wanting Shedeur Sanders at pick 3.
Right. Yeah. My thought with the Giants like to lean on history, right? They like to talk about that. And they seem to be wanting to replicate the Eli thing. That's why they went with Daniel Jones, kind of an Eli they thought was a kind of an Eli clone. He was coached by the same, brought up by the same quarterback guru. They thought, okay, we've got that guy. If you really want to go with Giants history, you just nailed it. Go back even further. Go back to LT. The Giants had a solid linebacking core when they got LT. When they got Banks, they had a solid linebacking core, but he was sitting there. You almost let the draft, and I've been saying it over and over again, let the draft come to you. Don't force, don't jump up, don't waste extra. Let it come to you, because there are two guys that really could be generational. But I'll always say a secondary can be beaten if you can't get to the quarterback, but you can cover up for a bad secondary if you can get after the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously they're both important. I think a good secondary helps you win regular season games and get into the playoffs. I think a great pass rush is what separates you from other great teams in the playoffs. And I'm all for you on the whole, like, letting the draft come to you. How often do we look back and be like, damn, we didn't fill the linebacker 3 years ago draft? No, we look at the player who went 3 picks after and like, damn, I wish we would have got him. So I player available is, it's something that people just say, but I truly do try to live by by that, especially once you get to day 3 when it's like those guys don't have much chance of becoming starting level players. Take the one that you think has the best chance. That being said, quarterback's different, right?
Right.
If I have Abdul Carter ranked ahead of a quarterback, but I think that quarterback's worthy of a top 10 pick, I'm taking the quarterback. The issue is Cam's the only guy I see in this draft
Right.
like that. I don't see that with Shador. I know he's been a polarizing prospect, and there's bad criticisms of him, but I don't think he's worthy of that, right? I don't see the anticipation or the post-snap processing that gets accredited in his completion percentage. He does have an NFL arm. He's extremely accurate. But he's not pitiful, but he's not somebody that I'm betting on being a consistent top 10 quarterback.
Right.
Right.
And I saw your mock draft on X. I think it was today or yesterday that you posted it.
Yeah.
And it looked a lot like the ones that I've been doing in the simulators lately. And I think the tragedy for this draft for the Giants is after Cam, there really isn't a quarterback. There are a couple maybe later in the draft you can maybe take a shot at, but it's a prayer at that point whether they can be, again, we're trying to find the guy. But there are enough people in this draft on the offensive, defensive line, edge, running back, wide receiver, especially when you get in the second and third round. I think once you get to like pick 15 to 20, it drops off rapidly. I'd be shocked to find that teams have more than maybe 15 players with first round grades in this draft, but I bet you they have a lot of second and third round grades. So to me, you also don't want to force picks in the second and third round too, unless you really have a conviction on a quarterback, because you can get a guy in the offensive line or the defensive line and really build up in the trenches. And as we see in our own division with the Philadelphia Eagles, we've got to start getting better in the trenches. So I like your draft because it seemed to be a trenches draft. So that's the direction I would go too.
Yeah, and fortunately, like this is supposed to be a strong defensive tackle group.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where they need the most pieces, right? Like I took in it, right? I took Eric Harmon the second, I took Eagles, the defense back in Virginia in the 4th round, and then I took another one the 7th round, right? Like in all different types of players, they need bodies there. I think Jeremiah Ledbetter's their second best defensive tackle. I think that's a bad room. Like you have a room that has Dexter Lawrence in it, and I think it's a weakness on the team. That's crazy, right? So that's going to need addressing, and hopefully the right players are there at the right picks, and they're not forced to just pick a guy because he has that position next to his name. So yeah, again BPA, but the trenches is where I want to invest, right? If the Eagles don't just get lucky with their O-line, D-line, they invest in it, right? They don't worry if they have starters there at the moment. They just keep like looking for those guys when they meet best player available. And it's no coincidence why they're able to, bully guys on the offensive line and get after the quarterback with their defensive line. I mean, look at how the D-line operated this past year.
Right.
And it wasn't any of the guys from the Super Bowl 2 years ago because they drafted guys when the need wasn't necessarily there.
I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles take another defensive lineman at 32 there, because there's going to be a bunch of defensive tackles, like you said, Harmon, but there's somebody, unless there's a run that I'm not anticipating in the first round on defensive tackles, somebody's going to be there at 34 for the Giants. That's going to be very attractive at defensive tackle. And like you said, the supply in this draft is really good. So I easily could see them taking 2 defensive tackles in this draft because there are a lot of good defensive tackles. So they could take one, I think they could take one as high as the 2nd round, and they could double dip as early again as the 4th round in this draft on that. Because I agree with you. I think the defensive line group is the one area that really needs a couple more bodies.
I wouldn't mind if they double dip in the 2nd and the 3rd round. Like we always mock the double dip at positions when it happens, and then we look back and like, man, that worked out for the Packers getting Tucker Kraft.
Right.
Or that worked out for the Ravens getting Mark Andrews. Like, it's like just take the players and that's a position where you don't play multiple guys for most of the game. Defensive tackle is right, so you don't. It's not like you're double dipping at quarterback or safety when you already have a good safety or something like that, where he's going to be useless as a 3rd safety. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the double dip position because if this is the strength of the draft, let's talk about lottery and taking chances. Well, let's let's make sure we at least get one out of those guys, good out of those guys, and possibly two.
Well, to answer, it's Bossman, who I just threw up on the screen. If the Giants don't take a quarterback at 3, so they don't take Sanders, where do you think, if you think they will take a quarterback, and who are you kind of leaning towards? And I'll preface that by saying I am all in on us getting Jalen Milroe.
Don't lead
that's
him.
just mine. I'm just saying it's mine. He's got his own opinion. He's not.
No, you're leading him. Ignore that. I strike that.
This isn't a court, for God's sakes.
So Eric, I just I've just finished my full Milroe write up, and unfortunately, I'm resigned to the fact that the Giants will take a quarterback on day 2, even though the hit rate is so low. Right, over the last 7 years, I think the only 2 hits on day 2 and day 3, and I'm counting a hit as like a top 20 QB, is Hurts and Purdy. And those guys both went into awesome situations. So I don't like doing it, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to take the guy that has like a superpower talent, and that's Jalen Milroe. Now, here's the thing.
Yep.
John, I don't think Jalen Milroe is going to be good, right? He's inaccurate. His footwork's a mess. The blitz just totally ruins his eyes. But he's someone where it's like if you get just a 60% of what he's capable of, you've got at least like a bottom end starter, a guy you can win games with there. If you take a Kyle McCord in the 3rd round, it's like what are we even trying for here? Is this just another Davis Webb, Kyle Lauletta?
Yeah, exactly.
Just to say that we took a quarterback.
Yeah.
So now again, this is part of the situation with Shane is there's no way they can sell Jalen Mayer not coming out of the draft with any rookie quarterback. So I think that I'm resigned to the fact that there will be a quarterback taken on day 2, just to say there is some sort of plan for the future, even though day 2 and day 3 QBs are just in a lottery. When you call the draft a lottery, that's the biggest losing ticket you get is the day 2 and day 3 quarterbacks.
The reason and I think maybe we're on the same page. I won't speak for you, Eric. I'm not speaking for him. I'm just saying the reason I'm on the page with Jalen Milroe is at a baseline. I am getting a much more athletic Taysom Hill. I'm getting a guy that I can bring in. He can run some of the stuff that Dable likes to do, the running game when we want to switch out. We want to get away because we've got Wilson and Winston. Neither one of those guys is really going to be runners anymore. That's not incorporated in the offense the way it was with Daniel Jones, the way he did it with Josh Allen. You're not going to have any of those plays. But if you want to change it up like the Steelers did with the Justin Fields with Wilson, I can bring a Milroe in. He can run some of those things. Worst case scenario, maybe I throw him in at back sometimes and just freak people out. I've got a guy that can do other stuff for me no matter what. At least it's not a quarterback. I swing for the fences. He does nothing and I'm cutting him later. He's got value and he's got athletic ability. That's why I want to take that chance with him. If he never develops as a quarterback, I draft one next year anyway.
Yeah, that's why I'm on the page. If I'm going to take a swing on anyone, it's him because he's a legitimately great athlete. He's not just like a good running QB. Like he is a great athlete, right? I posted a couple of clips of his runs versus LSU. It's like, man, this is just nasty the way he's able to move and make guys miss. And he has a big arm too, right? Like he's got a strong arm. He's got to figure out a way to put a little more touch on some of his throws. And I'm thinking if he cleans up his foot. But like you said, John, he's like sit 1 to 2 years and then let's revisit type of player. He's not the plan to come in if you're 4-7 and let's see what we have him in the rest of the games of the season, even though they might do that. He's someone that you should say we will not put him on the field unless in case of emergency. Like he's QB3 the entire season. We are focused on your development. Don't worry about what the opponent is doing, game plan. You worry on developing as a quarterback, and that's it. And that's what I would do if I were to take a swing on a guy like Jalen Milroe.
And I don't have any problem with them drafting him. I just would not draft him at 34. I think that
I'd be mad if they draft him at 34. It's got to be a 3rd round.
Yeah.
Yes.
I every year I put I tweet out like the picks at the Giants pick from the past 10 years. 34 is good, man. It's studs every single year. It's a stud player. Guys that are Pro Bowls, Pro Bowlers every single year. I'm not taking Milroe at 34 either. Like I think Milroe will be bad. Am I willing to take a swing in the 3rd round? Yes, but I'm not taking using that 34 on him.
Yeah, because every simulation I run, there is a really, really good player there at 34. One that can help on the offensive or defensive line, or even if you want to go get an impact player on offense still, there's somebody there. And again, it's the opportunity cost. If you draft Milroe there, what did you miss out on too? So I know, again, I've been preaching, pounding the table, we need a quarterback, but you can't make a quarterback when one doesn't exist. So that's where I'm coming from in this is we're not going to get a shot at Cam Ward. I still think they might call up the Titans on draft day and still make one last shot to try to get Cam Ward. I don't write that off, but I don't see the quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, and I'll give you a sneak peek on this tweet that I have scheduled for next Wednesday. Lad McConkey at pick 34 last year, Sam Laporta, Christian Watson, Elijah Moore, not so good. Michael Pittman Jr., Rocky Sin, Will Hernandez, Cam Robinson, Jalen Smith was really good for a long time, and Donovan Smith. I mean, it's Will Hernandez, Rocky Sin, and Elijah Moore are the three misses, and those are all starters in the NFL as well.
Right.
And
So-
they could also it's the second pick, and the first pick in the second day is always
are New York players.
You always get you always get teams calling up at the top of the second round on day 2. Usually the very first pick gets the most traffic, obviously. But I expect them to use that pick, but they may get some really good offers. And if you could trade down and still get, if you really love Milroe at some point, maybe later in the second round, but also get maybe another third or fourth round pick, I'm more willing to do that. But I either keep that pick and use it at another spot, or I'm trading down if I get a really good offer at that spot. But
yeah, like I said, I'm willing to take a swing on Milroe in the third round, but I'm not making a priority of hope no one else takes him, right?
Yeah.
Like someone else takes him ahead of us.
Yeah.
It's, hey, there goes that swing, but it's no sweat off my brow. Like he's not if I viewed him so highly enough to where, that would worry me, he'd be someone that I'd be looking in the first round. And I don't think he's just not that level of player.
So if Ward goes 1 and Carter goes 2, are you thinking the Giants should jump on Hunter, or is that where you look to maybe you don't look to move down at that point, get extra picks and maybe take Sanders lower?
Again, we have to see what the offer was. If it was a bad team that offered next year's first rounder, yeah, I'd entertain it, right? If the Raiders offered their first round pick next year, even then with Geno, they might be a little better. Let's say, whatever team that I think will be bad next year, no matter what. I'd be willing to entertain it. But I used to be the trade down guy, trade down. I've kind of off that. Give me the good players, right?
Right.
Like it all sounds good in theory until you look back and hey, man, who did we just pass up on? We just passed up on Micah Parsons. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome that we now have Kadarius Toney and Evan Neal. While we could have had Micah Parsons. So, yeah. Now, obviously, the Giants need a quarterback eventually, and it sucks, right? And this is part of the quarterback's position that we hate to admit. It's a lot of luck that is involved to getting the right quarterback. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes to admit that about what are you going to do a quarterback? You just if they won 3 games last year, they would have had their quarterback. Instead, they won 3 games in a year where 5 different teams won 3 games, and it was one of the the worst years for the bottom of the league. It's if they didn't beat the Colts, then we'd just take Cam Ward at 1.
Don't get Eric going.
Don't start.
Don't get Eric going. Jesus Christ.
It's just unfortunate, and no one likes to admit because it's it's just not a plan. I agree, right? I'm not sitting here being wait for next year's class. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't believe in this quarterback. I'm not taking him. You can't talk to me about philosophy and got to take a swing eventually, all that. No, I don't think that quarterback is going to be good, and I'm not betting on him, no matter what his name is or what the draft, analysts say. I don't think I'm taking quarterback just because of the need of quarterback.
Right, and I mean, and it's not just luck. Sometimes it's also system that leads a guy to be successful. But if he went to a different team, just the way you play. Brock Purdy. I don't think Brock Purdy would be as successful had he gone to a different team. It worked out that the 49ers and that system allowed him to flourish and come through. I mean, hell, even Tom Brady was. Nobody thought Tom Brady was going to be Tom Brady. That's one of those weird things. So sometimes it just really matches up with where you are. And then the guy himself, you can't predict what's inside the guy when he gets a chance to really prove it. Any thoughts on, because I said I'd keep it pretty tight for you. So we're at 7. So I want to kind of finish that up, but thoughts on the Giants possibly then taking Hunter or Carter high and trading back in, trying to get Jackson Dart. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm out on that. If you believe in him good enough to trade back into the first round, then just pick him at number 3 and laugh at the draft analyst, or everyone who's roasting at you. If you believe that, because you're not like, so then you get Travis Hunter, and then what? You traded away pick 34 and pick 65 and a 3rd round pick next year. Like just if you believe in him that he's worthy of the 20th pick, just take him at pick 3. You're taking that guy to be your long-term quarterback. Take a chance if you believe in him enough to pick him at pick 20. So I'm not in on that. Now you can back into it working out, right? The
Sure.
Ravens drafting Hayden Hurst and then trading up for Lamar Jackson worked out, but in hindsight, the Ravens should have just drafted Lamar Jackson at pick 25.
That's a good point.
And not took the chance of somebody else getting him.
What? They got Hayden Hurst earlier. I mean, come on.
Yeah, not even the best tight end from that class for them. It's like they got Lamar Jackson and they drafted a 25-year-old baseball player in the first round.
So before we let you go, obviously you've gone through some big changes over the last 2 weeks. Really, a lot of stuff has changed. Let folks know all about the new stuff that you're doing, and I'm sure plenty know already. You have exploded immediately moving over to Giant Nation, but tell everybody where they can find all your stuff. I'm going to link it all in the description after the fact, but go ahead and let everybody know where they can now find all your stuff, Bobby.
Yeah, it's Giants Nation Show on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Finally got it on Spotify after threatening them enough on social media. Just Giants Nation Show on there. If you follow me on socials, Bobby Skinner. It's been exciting, man. Obviously you'll watch the video, and I was bothered by how things went down and stuff, but I got to build up back some social media accounts and stuff, which takes time. But I've been having more fun than I've ever had. It's like It's like doing it. It's starting afresh. People are excited, and I'm having fun. I'm excited for the draft month. Going to do draft previews. We're going to stream the entire draft. Like we're going to do very similar things. It'll be different, but it'll be similar. And I'm having a lot of fun. So we're just right now just trying to go balls to the wall and attack draft month as hard as possible, and then figure out how to run a business in the summer.
I just have a quick follow-up. So those that haven't seen it, watch Bobby's video explaining. I think it was like a 40-minute video that you did explaining everything that had. It was a really good video, and I recommend it. If you haven't seen it, everyone go back and watch it. You did this group up in if they're in New Jersey really insist that you be up there to play warehouse games? Was that really part of the problem that they were having? Because I had to ask people what the hell a warehouse game was in the first place. That's just how old I am. I said, what the fuck what is a warehouse game?
Oh, man, now I got to put a note on there.
So I hate to defend them but their warehouse games do get a lot of views. Now they invest a ton for a warehouse. So it's not like it's this thing that gets 20 views and people are like, they want you to do it. Like it does do good numbers, but yeah, that was kind of like I'm not doing that, not because I don't want to. Well, actually, it is because I don't want to do it. I'm a 33-year-old, man. I don't want to do that. It doesn't help me in my career.
Right.
And this was like I'm willing to do things that don't just help me as far as a company. I'm not going to be selfish, but I felt it would hurt the other products, and I wasn't willing to do that.
It would have, and you explained that in the video.
I swing the bat with my eyes closed. My right hand comes off the bat. If I get contact, I can make some power, but I'm not going to make contact that often. I don't want that part of my weekly routine.
And you're sitting there going, I could be breaking down more tape right now, and I'm playing this game.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I'm like, what is a warehouse game? So someone on the site told me, and I had to bring it up on YouTube, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I think you made the right choice.
It wasn't slang or code. It really they play games in a warehouse. It is what it is.
God bless you if you love that.
Well.
But I don't know who's watching that, but
a lot apparently.
I'm not saying it doesn't do well. It's just it doesn't. it doesn't benefit. I'm happy. That's
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want to
That's
read
and
more
that's
too
us.
much
And I
into it.
don't and I don't want to ask you anything. You can just tell me, John. I don't want to. But just out of curiosity, I thought you were very open, very. You kind of pulled back the curtain on your feelings about the situation. You and Justin have been doing this for a while. Have you two had a chance to talk to each other since that time, or and again, you could say I don't want to talk about it.
yeah.
That's
You
fine.
may not want to talk.
Yeah, I'm
about
not going to go too deep into it. I mean, we haven't. I'm sure at some point we will. I think the wound is a little fresh,
Sure.
and I think where I probably did Justin a little wrong is I didn't share everything on why I was bothered by right there is other stuff, and it's not even stuff that's necessarily just wrong. It's just it's it I long story short is I would have left if they did that to him. That I mean that's kind of the long story short,
Right.
but
Right.
hey,
I
it
got
is
you.
what it is. There's other stuff that's again not like he sinned or did something terrible to me. It's just it's the wound's a little fresh. I'm sure we'll talk at some point. I'm not wishing any ill will against him or anything. It's just there's when things break up, it doesn't go well, and I'm sure we'll
Yeah,
reconcile.
of course.
Well, and talking Giants was your baby too. So I mean, and I've talked about this with my wife, and I would have been pretty. To be honest with you, I would have been pretty pissed. So
99%, 95% of the gripe was with them, and my thing is I told. All right, this is the last I'll say.
Yeah,
Sure, please.
You guys are good at you guys. I'm bad at keeping things. When I asked to keep the Talking Giants stuff, it wasn't simply like, well, I started it, it should be mine.
right.
It was, I don't think it's going to go well for you guys if you keep it. So let's keep let's give the best case scenario for all. And part of that is Justin. Like Justin got a lot of hate because of their decision to keep it.
Sure.
Right? Even if even though that he wanted, like he got like if they had not done that, like hey, I take it. And has his stuff that he's doing. If he can build up another Giant show or whatever. But it's just unfortunately now it's people are hating them. Like, and it could have been avoided if it was just like, yeah, Bobby did start this. We understand why he doesn't want to be here. We all wish each other well. Obviously, nothing ends on fully mutual terms. But it would have been less public if it was just, hey, you did create this. This is not going to do well without you.
Right.
So it is what it is. I'm rooting for Justin to do well. It's just most of my gripe weren't really with Justin, and I tried to make him the least focal point of all that. But because we did it for 6 years, people are obviously going to focus on that.
Yeah, of course. Well, I appreciate that. So I'm going to link all your stuff after the fact. I'll do the pieces in the write up. But first off, thanks for coming on. I know we were going to keep it tight to. So absolute last question. At this point, you're leaning towards you think the Giants will take who at number 3? Who do you think is ultimately going to be their guy?
Whoever of Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter is available.
Okay.
So I'll come down and say one. I think Travis Hunter ends up being the pick.
Wow. Okay. All right. So we'll look forward to keep following you. We'll definitely love to catch up again down the road. Great, continued success. You have taken off like crazy since you moved over to Giants Nation. The following from the other show has jumped and followed you here. Your O-line breakdowns is how I got originally introduced to you a number of years ago, and those were awesome. So happy to have you on. And
it's Bobby against the world. So.
That's right.
Well, no, it's Giants Nation for life now.
For life. That's right. For life. I like that. So cool. Well, Bobby, appreciate you coming on. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll catch up with you again down the road.
Come on.
Thanks, guys. Talk soon.
All right, that was awesome.
That was really cool.
And
so we're staying on for a few minutes, right?
We're going to stay on for a few minutes. It was our first attempt at inviting somebody to come to the live stream. We've recorded people elsewhere and then shared that. We haven't. This is the first time, and we're using Streamlabs to do this for the live pieces. So we're still getting used to a lot of stuff.
Right.
I don't know.
He's a little choppy on his feet.
Well, and I'm wondering if it's his. I'm beginning to think that it might be coming from my feed, even though I'm clear as can be to me. You guys are choppy, but we are having some really heavy thunderstorms. It's a second time in a row for our show. And I kept thinking, I saw some lights flicker and I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, that's not good. But so far so good. But that was awesome. That was good. We got a lot of good talk there. a lot of stuff that you and I've talked about. So I want to back up real quick. You are more pro, and I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm not saying you're all for him, but you're more pro Sanders than I am. So what were your thoughts now after hearing Bobby's talk about Sanders, and how do you feel still if the Giants took Sanders at 3?
As I said on the last show, I'm kind of in a situation where I'm not going to be completely thrilled with any pick. And I'm going to explain that. The best obvious choice is to take Hunter or Carter. And if they get either one of those, that's a home run. Okay. The number one home run would have been if they had the number 1 overall pick and took Ward. That's off the table. If they can't get him, which they're not going to get him, getting one of the other two, that's a home run. Though that I'm perfectly happy. But in the back of my head is what a lot of people in chat were saying while we were talking to Bobby, when are we going to get the quarterback? So part of me is like, okay, we're going to punt on the quarterback again. And it's probably the right decision to do. Now, somebody raised a very good point, but you can't think like this. What if they pass on Shedeur, and Shedeur again becomes like Knicks but better? You know, it's the same type of situation. The Giants aren't really going to compete seriously again until they fix the quarterback situation long term. That's where I'm at. I look at this draft, and Shedeur, I'm not crazy about him. But I do think he's better than people are giving him credit for. But I'm not taking him at 3 at this point. I wouldn't do it. And could they? Sure. I will not be shocked if you and I, when we're doing our live stream on draft day, if they say Giant, with the 3rd overall pick, the Giants take Shedeur Sanders, and you and I are like, like this. I won't be shocked if they do that. I don't think you would be either.
I wouldn't
won't
be
happy.
Right. I wouldn't be shocked. I will say that if he drops, and I do think he'll drop some, if he gets into the 10 to 15 range, you got to start wondering if the Giants are trying to come back into the draft.
But that gets to the point like that Bobby was making.
Yes.
If you feel that passionately about him, then why would you do that? The only way I trade down, if you really like Shedeur, the only people I would be talking to are the Patriots and the Jaguars, because I think you can get. I mean, obviously, no. The Patriots trade up. They're only trading up 1 spot to make sure that they could get Hunter or Carter. But I would think. I think
more than likely, I think it would be. Yeah. I think that's
so it's kind of like the Shockey deal year when we traded up 1 spot to make sure we got
2002.
Them. So because, and someone asked me on Twitter today, well, why the hell would New England do that? Well, because New England's got to worry about if Jacksonville's calling the Giants and offering something serious too.
Sure.
So now the risk in that is somebody could jump ahead of us with New England if we trade down to the Jaguars. But I'm willing to take that kind of risk. I don't think people are that high on Shedeur. Maybe that's dumb on my part, but that's the only way I trade down if I'm interested in Shedeur.
So this is where I'll argue against both what Bobby said and what you said.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with Shedeur at 3. It has to do with where do you have Carter? If you have Carter as the best player in this draft, period.
Yeah.
Right.
And
like
they may,
and on their board. And like Bobby said, and there's truth to it. If Carter could be here and Ward is here, that means Ward is really above because you have a need at quarterback.
Sure.
But if you're talking Carter's number 1, Ward is off the board. So the quarterback position is now Sanders. If Sanders is this much above Dart, and he might be, we don't know that, but Carter is the number 1 player. You take Carter, and now Sanders that's our next best quarterback. And now he's sitting in a spot that we could go get him. I could see that. Carter, to me, and we talked about this a long time ago, I was on board with Carter a while back, especially when I thought we were going to have Stafford, especially when I thought we were going to have Rodgers. I wanted Carter. Carter makes you a 3-headed monster on the outside, and it relieves us of having to give Thibodeau a longer extension. We could just do the pick up the 5th-year option, let it ride out and see what happens. And then you've got a Carter on one side, Burns on the other. You got Thibodeau. We can mix those guys. We can move them around. We're not held hostage by if one guy's injured, we're screwed.
Right.
So I like that fact. But the next part, though, is the quarterback. Now, I am not on board. I asked a question, but I'm actually not on board with trading back in. I go Carter at 3, and we're going to talk about this more. And I do want to bring up some other things that are coming up. But I would go Carter at 3 if he's sitting there. I'm not as on board with Hunter, but whatever. So Carter at 3. I'm with you, and you've won me over on this. I want one of the defensive tackles at 34. There's too many good ones. Now,
They're
if one
so good. I mean, there's going to be and if they don't, if those guys don't drop, an offensive lineman's going to be
well,
there.
that's where I was going to say. If you've got one of those sort of, he's kind of a tackle, but he could also be guard, but he has that kind of ability to be either one. So the guy out of Oregon, I think, is one of the options you could look at. He could play tackle, he could play guard.
There's a bunch of those guys too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's still some pure guards that are just really good. You could look there, but defensive tackle, the guy out of Ohio State, I'm looking at.
Oh yeah,
Grant of Michigan. If he falls out of 32, I'm looking to make sure he's sitting there at 34. I gobble him up.
I keep seeing people saying that guy won't get to us, but
probably not.
I've run a million. This is driving my wife crazy. Whoever told me to start doing these draft simulators like a week ago, I've been doing them nonstop.
I love them.
But there's always a defensive tackle there that shouldn't be there every time I run a simulation. Now, maybe, again, these are simulations, doesn't mean anything, but I think this draft is so deep at defensive tackle, it's going to be like running back. I think some teams are going to say, we can get our defensive tackle later in the draft. We can get our running back later in the draft. So I think these guys are going to drop, and I think somebody's going to be there and that can help us big time, that you can plug next to. So say you get Carter at 3. He is an incredible pass rusher. He's like lightning. I've talked about it before. It's like watching the old Tecmo football game where LT was at a different speed. He's at a different speed.
Right.
Not the best run defender in the world. He can work on that, but he's not the best run defender in the world. Burns, Thibodeau, especially Burns, really good at rushing the passer. Not the best run defenders in the world. If you put Williams, the Ohio State tackle, next to Dexter, that's a wall of meat just with 2 guys. Then your guys on the ends are going to have a lot more freedom to do their business. So the part of the problem is it's not just been that Dexter's a one-man show there, but you have to pull him out of the game at times because he needs a break. So that's why I agree with Bobby. Get 2 defensive tackles in this draft, and every time I run a simulation, somebody around 4th, 5th round, and I'm still thinking, well, I need this position, but then I look at the value, and I'm like, that guy's not supposed to be there. And I'm like, you know what? Having 2 really good defensive tackles, even if one of those guys doesn't start soon, it's the Philadelphia Eagles model. It's bring them in waves, and that's what we got to get to.
Well, imagine, right? If you go linebacker. We put Carter out there. That dude can play a lot. I mean, we say he can be edge. He can play inside if he had to on linebacker on passing downs. You could bring him in and rush up the middle. You could really have 3 big time pass rushers on the field at the same time, depending on how you want to line up. You get a defensive tackle.
NASCAR.
Exactly. You get a defensive tackle at 2. Now we've got. We're basically building an entire front that can be game changing.
Right.
So let's say they do that. Let's say you go Carter. Let's say you go defensive tackle. Now in 3. Now I want to. Now I'm willing to maybe even take my 2 3s and jump up to maybe get Milroe if I want to get him. If I'm convinced. But if not, there's some receivers that are going to drop into the 3rd round. The Giants have been looking very heavily at running back.
Why would Milroe want to go to the draft? Do you think he knows something?
Well, I don't. They generally don't ask to go. They usually are asked to go.
Yeah.
And if the NFL is asking them to go, they have an inclination that they could. I think a lot of people are pegging Milroe to be another Lamar Jackson coming in very late in the 1st round. Don't discount Baltimore as a team that might do that, because now you've got a guy.
That's a good point.
And even if he doesn't develop to what Lamar is, you don't have to change your offense at all because you're going to do a lot of the.
That's actually a really good point, John. They could that's a good fit for them. Milroe to me is one of the most interesting what ifs in this draft, because again, the odds of him turning into a really good quarterback are not good.
Right.
But if he does,
It's a home
combining that
run.
with
It's
the
a home run.
running, it's unbelievable. It's a gamble on greatness thing, but it's one of those gamble on greatnesses that the pay. I mean, you get like a 10 or a 20% chance tops that it's going to pay off for you. So when I do these simulations, second in that third round pick at the top of the third round, there are some really good football players there. And maybe the positions, and this is one thing I will say to fans out there, and this is just something that drives me nuts on draft day, is sometimes, and I feel I fall victim to this sometimes too. You get so focused on, we need this, we need a quarterback, we need an offensive lineman, we need this, we need that sometimes you, and when you do take that player, you don't focus on the fact, well, the guy may not be that good. And then a year from now, you're still trying to fill that hole. So don't always focus on the position. It drives me crazy every year on the draft where somebody says, well, we didn't need another linebacker. That's not the point. You want a player that's going to be there for 8, 9, 10 years and play at a high level. You don't want to get somebody that, well, he crosses off a need, but he's out of the league after his rookie contract. So that's where I'm coming from. So the Evan Neal draft, for example, and again, it shouldn't have panned out that way. Everyone said we got to get an offensive lineman with one of those 2 picks. If you could go back and do it again, I guarantee you hardly any Giant fan would go back and take an offensive lineman with one of those 2 picks, because the other 2 linemen that went to, they hadn't really lived up to their draft status either. You would have gone back and taken a player at another position. You would have taken the receiver the Jets took.
Well, history, if you really pay attention to it, there are a lot of high first round, top 10, lot of whiffs at offensive line.
Yep.
Especially at tackle. Those guys, it tends to be the guy that, like if you look at the Giants, right? 1988, who did we draft in the first round? Eric Moore. Who did we draft in the second round? Jumbo Elliott. Who was the better offensive lineman for the New York Giants? Jumbo Elliott. So
remember the Jason Sehorn draft too? Who didn't we?
We had Thomas Randolph, same draft. Yeah. So we're going to keep this tight. We wanted to stick to an hour. We did that. I do.
We could go on and on.
We could. There's a lot.
Let's keep it short. Let's keep it short.
We actually have a lot of shit coming up. So
you want to drop the one guest that we're coming?
Yeah, I'm going to drop the thing. Now we're going to record this one. It's not going to be live, and I'm not going to tell you the day just in case something weird happens to get moved. But Howard Cross will be coming on, so we're going to be recording an episode with Howard Cross. We're going to talk a lot about more current Giants. We'll try to set something up in the future, talk past, but current Giant stuff with Howard. We also want to talk to Howard about his son, who's in the draft. So I'd like to get some thoughts on that as well. So we'll be talking to Howard Cross. We are going to be guests on New York Rush on their show on Wednesday night.
And that's on Wednesday
night. Yeah. And then we're in the process of finalizing. He did say he'd come on. So we're finalizing getting Carl Banks. So
yeah, and that would be cool too.
So fun stuff.
Carl Banks. And again, I think we're going to talk to Howard this week because most of the interest is on the draft, his son being in the draft too. And we'll talk about current Giant stuff, but I'd love to have Howard Cross come back on again and talk about the old Giant stuff, because he's number 3 in all-time list in games played as a New York Giant. Only Eli Manning and Michael Strahan are above him. And he played under a bunch of coaches, and his viewpoint on all of that would be great. So
we've got a lot of stuff going on, but it was fun having Bobby on. It's good to be able to do stuff. It's not like I don't have a lot of. I can't speak for you, but it's not like I don't have a lot of other shit going on at the same time. So it's trying to arrange all this stuff, and we've got the draft thing coming up pretty soon, and that's going to be fun. We're going to be live streaming during the draft, and I guarantee you there will be an F-bomb dropped if the Giants go in a really weird direction.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a good idea or not,
but it is. I think it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of fun.
I just hope we're like this instead of like John Mara grabbing the chair and.
Right. Trust me, if I grab a chair, it's going a lot further than John Mara's did.
Yeah.
I can promise you that.
Even with the wrist,
broken wrist and all. But if I'm lucky, this stupid cast comes off on Wednesday. So that's what I'm hoping for.
So maybe you shouldn't be throwing chairs then.
Yeah. Well, with your bad knee, Ed, you shouldn't be throwing anybody. What movie? What movie is that from?
Oh,
come on. Anybody knows it in chat. With your bad knee, Ed, you shouldn't be throwing anybody.
Oh, I know, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember this. All right, give it up. because no one's doing it.
Ferris Bueller.
Ferris
You're
Bueller,
my
that's right,
hero.
that's
Yeah,
right.
I love that.
That's the secretary. It's the secretary.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we're gonna wrap it up. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. We're over 1,050 subscribers. We're really cruising. We've got a lot of views. I'm hoping to really build this more. Eric and I are putting a lot of time and effort into it, and we want it to be fun and really grow. So if you could, I'd appreciate it. And other than that, we'll call it a night, and we'll see you guys later this week. And make sure you watch New York Rush as well on Wednesday night when we're guesting on there, and watch them in general. We'll give them a shout out.